Hello, welcome to episode number 77 of CXO-Talk. I am Michael Krigsman, and I keep thinking of superlatives, but I can't think of enough. My superlative-worthy co-host, Vala Afshar. Hey,
Michael,
Vala, how are you doing?
How are you? Doing well.
So we have this fist bump that, of course, nobody can see. We used to have a fist bump cam.
Yes, we might bring that for future episodes.
I think we need to bring that back. And we're here with a very interesting gentleman, Malcolm Frank, who is the Executive Vice President responsible for strategy and marketing at one of the largest computer services companies in the world, Cognizant. Malcolm, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Malcolm, thank you very much for joining us. Could you briefly tell us about your background and what you do at Cognizant?
At Cognizant, I think I basically just fly too much, but we are. But it's terrific. We're, as you were sharing, we're a large consulting and systems integration and business process services firm. About 185,000 employees around the world, working mostly with Fortune 500 companies all around the world. And my role at the company, I wear three hats. One is I am the Chief Strategy Officer, so figure out where the industry is going, where technology is headed, what our clients are up to, and how do we best serve them going into the future. Also the Chief Marketing Officer. We do about $10 billion of revenue, so need to worry about how do we find opportunities in the markets and continue to grow as we have. And then the third is I head our digital consulting group, so helping clients navigate this transition to the digital economy and the work that we're conducting there. So I've been at the company about 9 years, and that's what I'm up to.
And you were, or maybe you still are associated with the Cognizant Center for the Future of Work, and you wrote a book out of that. So maybe tell us about your connection to that center and what it is, and about your book.
Yeah, the Center for the Future of Work, we about 5 years ago launched this because we felt we were at this important turning point where firms are going digital, and in many ways they're just organized the wrong way. They're constructed for the past and aren't ready for the future. So we decided to look at that empirically, understand what's going on. We have brought together some world-class analysts into the group, and on top of that, worked with a number of academic institutions, with INSEAD, MIT, Carnegie Mellon, and have been just conducting a number of work projects over the past several years around this issue of how our industry structures transforming, and then also how our company structures and the very nature of work itself beginning to transform.
As you conducted this study, can you talk to us a little bit about technology trends that impact future of work?
Yeah, I think the largest, we all deal with it in our consumer lives, and it's interesting. When I joined this industry over a quarter century ago, I probably shouldn't admit that, at least to myself. But this was where the action was in high tech. The cool stuff was happening at scale. It was happening in corporations, and that's been very different the past decade. The consumer market has been where the action is, and things have been on fire. And that's been driven by four technologies or technology constructs that we see working in parallel. It's social. Facebook and Twitter obviously are at the vanguard and leaders in that. It's been happening in mobile. What we're all living these highly mobile lives that are only going to become more and more mobile. Analytics and advanced analytics and what we're seeing with data science. And then the final piece is with the cloud. And together, social, mobile, analytics, cloud, we use the acronym, the SMAC stack. I thought it was better than rearranging those letters like with scam. That's not a good way to talk about technology in the marketplace. But the SMAC stack is one that we can all look at it, and clearly it's transformed our personal lives. But now we're seeing those technologies have a profound impact on company structures and how companies perform in the marketplace.
Now, you wrote a book called Code Halos, and that talks about digital transformation. So tell us about Code Halos and the intersection with these future of work trends that you were just describing.
Yeah, it started with our work out of the Center for the Future of Work, and we're looking at a few questions. For example, why didn't MySpace win against Facebook? It seems like they should have. Why didn't Yahoo dominate the way Google has? And we started looking at firms like that, but it quickly led us to, this is not an issue of the Silicon Valley wonderkin. These are universal business issues, and so that was the first observation. The second, and this is where the notion code halo comes from, that all of us now live virtual lives as well as physical lives. So we all have a good sense of our physical self, we always have. But now you have a virtual self. Every time you conduct a search, every time you use your GPS, that you use a Fitbit or a fuel band, you're leaving digital exhaust. And just think through the last 24 hours of your life. There's a massive amount of digital exhaust you have admitted, you've put out there. Some companies have become very good at seeing that, and they actually know the virtual you better than the physical you. This is, for example, where Pandora, you just put in a few of your favorite songs, and you get hours of curated, customized music coming back at you. It creates little spooky things where Netflix may actually know your taste in movie, or the movie you want to see on Saturday night better than your spouse does, or Amazon may know your taste in literature better than your sister does. And so it's because these firms can see that digital exhaust, or they see your code halo, that halo of code that's always around each of us now. And the firms that have figured this out have started to dominate their markets. It's the story of Apple, it's the story of Google, it's the story of Facebook and Amazon.
Sure.
But now we're seeing it coming to a lot more traditional industries as well.
Sure. Well, I'm the CMO of Extreme Networks, and early last year, I decided that I'm not going to use resumes anymore to hire marketeers. I would only hire strictly through social media. In fact, I ended up hiring a senior director of digital marketing through Twitter because I found that the personal brand is digital footprint plus digital exhaust.
Yes.
And the digital exhaust gave me insight in terms of cultural fit for candidates. Boy, this person looks great on a resume, but wow, what crappy comments that he or she leaves on other people's blogs. And, kind of a mean-spirited person is not going to be quite a fit, even though they have the credentials. So I think the digital exhaust is impacting how we recruit, how I recruit talent into the business, but also the the purposeful, like blogs, community involvement, slide shares, infographics. So I'm wondering, as you look at future of work, I personally believe fast forward 5 to 10 years and the resume is dead. And is that something that you think will be hit a tipping point at some point?
There's no question about it. And Vala, you're onto a really important point. We're going to look at a resume and think, boy, what a silly notion that was. Let's have somebody get their entire life onto one little piece of paper.
That's right. I was the captain of the high school team, and I cured common cold with the acronyms I need for the the automated systems to pick up my resume.
Exactly. Now that said, some things are important.
Sure.
If somebody has a double E from MIT, clearly you trust MIT's admissions process and you trust them as an institution. So that's something like that still really means something, obviously. But
sure.
Do you mean a resume? It would almost be, how many Friday nights of our lives did we waste because we walked down to the local video store and we decided to watch movie A over movie B because of what was written on the back of that little, VCR or DVD catalog. And so that is really what a resume is. You would never trust a film without going out to its code halo, meaning what does Cinematch tell you, or what do you see on Rotten Tomatoes? And I think the same, you would look at the bag, you're like, well, of course we know what the studio is going to say. That's the same with a resume now. And so you're exactly right. That's what it is. It's the code halo of somebody. That's how you judge talent. That's how you see, are they going to be a fit in your organization, and that there are voices that you really trust. And so it's in the HR function and the whole HR supply chain, we think that code halos are going to have a really strong impact.
So we're talking about data here. So we're talking about how business and personal lives change, as a result of data. And so that puts, in effect, data science and analytics at the center of how marketing is done, but it's not just marketing, it's also operations as well, isn't it?
That's right. That's exactly right. I mean, look for example, in insurance. The insurance industry is at the beginning, we believe, of a real renaissance. Look at property and casual when you get automotive insurance or home insurance. Right now, that's done one-to-many. That is going to become a true one-to-one marketplace, not based on what actuaries think, but actually how you behave. So you may see in auto insurance today, they're seeing a real correlation in data between your credit history and whether or not you're going to wrap a car around a telephone pole. There's real correlations there. That's just one of hundreds that we're going to see in the next decade. And it's going to come through instrumentation. So the next car you drive will be very instrumented, and you can choose. Do I wish to share that information with my insurer so they can see exactly how I drive? And if I'm a good driver, I get lower rates. The same way with your home. Your home is going to be instrumented. Do you want to share that with your insurer? And if they see certain things, you can get lower rates as well. So you can see exactly in those cases that insurance firm will be inundated with data, and they need to figure out, with all of that new levels of data coming in, how do they make meaning? How do they see, really know what they're looking for, make the correlations, and provide completely new capability back to the consumer?
But Malcolm, this type of transition that you're describing, that is based on instrumenting your processes and instrumenting the interactions and engagements that you have with your customers, and then using that data to derive meaningful results, this is a very different way of thinking.
Yes.
Right. So how do companies? What should companies do? How do you adopt this type of changed mindset and understanding and skills and competencies?
Exactly. And some companies, it's initially very intimidating because they look at the story of what happened with Nokia versus Apple and Google, what happened with Blockbuster versus Netflix, and they just think, wow, this makes my hair hurt. It's too large. It feels too difficult. But we say start. There are two areas where it's starting. One is building that code halo around the individual customer or consumer, and are you able to do that? The second area is around, if you sell products, instrument the machine. A good example is with General Electric. If you look at their ads now, GE talks about the brilliant machine. What they're essentially doing is putting code halos around their industrial products. So they started with jet engines, where they would instrument the jet engine and show in real time to their airline customers what's happening. That's been such a success that they are now committing back to the airlines more than $3 billion of annual savings. So in an industry where you can't check your bag and they won't give you honey roast peanuts anymore, those savings really matter. And now they're doing it with locomotives, with power turbines, CAT scanners, and the rest. So what you see is they started one part of the business, saw how it worked, and then started to move it across the organization. But from an IT perspective, it really requires three new skill sets. The first is design. So, let's face it, most internal IT groups are not known for building beautiful systems. In fact, look at the language that we use. They're built for users, captive users. So how do you instead build these for consumers who are going to be seeing them on the fly, using them on an iPad, using them on smartphone to create compelling, engaging, beautiful experiences? So design really matters. A second thing is knowing these SMAC technologies. How do you instrument something? What do you do in terms of IoT? How do you build security behind that? There's new skill sets needed there. And then the third that you talked about is on the data science. Finding those extraordinary math geeks who understand your systems and your data infrastructure as well, and also have a great curiosity about one's business. Because that's when you find the correlations, is continually asking questions. And in terms of doing that, that curiosity applied through the science leads to these new insights on consumer behavior or how to put new products together.
Sure, sure. Well, I think that, to answer Michael's questions in terms of how do you do this, I think one, there's a cultural element to this where you have to convince yourself that given the growing IQ of the consumer and the organization around you, digital IQ, and it probably started, some would argue maybe 2007, the smartphone, iPhone, started that revolution. It led with apps and mobile and social and some of these mega trends you mentioned. But the power of pull versus power of push. And if you're going to really adopt that power of pull, and you see companies doing that with inbound marketing where they're trying to leverage analytics to create precision marketing, where you're delivering content during the buyer's journey that can specifically meet the needs of the buyer. But it does require an intersection, strong intersection of technology-driven marketing. So can you give us advice in terms of, as a CMO and strategist for Cognizant, in addition to the skill set you need in marketing, what are some of the technologies that you need to think about investing to deliver that level of relevant messaging and connections with your customers?
It's a great point. The power of pull. I think markets are now conversations, and so marketing teams need to know how to engage in that conversation. In the past, marketeers were these wild narcissists who would just talk and talk and talk and then talk a little bit more, and they thought that was their job, to project the message. That's not it at all anymore. It's about how do you, as you said, get to that power of pull, and that's by building one-to-one relationship-based capability and create these curated, individualized experiences. And it's interesting, Vala, because a lot of people get concerned about that, and they look at their business model and think, that's too hard, that's too expensive, how do I scale that? But then you look at what a Netflix has done, what an Amazon has been able to do. That's precisely what they're doing. They're just leveraging technology in a new way to do it. So it's the skill sets that are needed. This is where you start to get the intersection of some of these new IT capabilities I was talking about, infused with a marketing mindset. And so you start to build that code halo around a customer, and you also then start to recognize what are the causal factors and what are the relationships between their behavior and what you sell as a company, so that you could provide the right thing in the right place at the right time.
Right.
So to give an example, the life insurance business, we think, is another one that can go through significant change, because the model now is an agent will come talk to you and buy you breakfast twice a year. We're going to look back and think that was insane. They'd be like, hey, Michael, how's it going? What's big in your life? Didn't see the last Rotary Club meeting. That's not the way it's going to work. It's going to be where you, in some ways, are a bit instrumented so that they can recognize what's happening in your life and also the life events of your family members around you. And once they see that, then they can show up in those moments of truth and say, hey, have you really thought about this product or that one that may suit your needs as your life has just changed with the birth of a child, or maybe you had a sibling that passed away, whatever it may be, where you start to reconsider what your life insurance is all about. So it's we have to get people out of the mindset. I think where they get stuck is when they perceive the business in a physical sense, that, gee, to do that many transactions equals this many people, as opposed to really understanding how you can scale significantly when you digitize a lot of this and start to automate it and work on that platform.
So what you're describing then is a very significant shift in the relationship between the seller and the buyer. And this, we've heard about mass customization for a long time, but now what you're describing is using that data to refine the experience that you offer to down to that segment size of one. And it also connects to changing the business model, right? Because once you start to do that, you have new opportunities. So maybe can you talk about that relationship between the buyer and the seller, as well as the shift in business models, and how does this all come together?
Yeah, no, it's a great point, and we think there are two areas. One is at the customer interface, and that's where mass customization finally does come to fruition. So, in the physical economy, I think that we tried to do this 100 years ago, and this was Henry Ford's great gift to capitalism. Was he just said you can't do mass customization; it's prohibitively expensive. So you can have your Model T in any color so long as it's black. But that was
Uber.
Yeah. So that's been with us now for 100 years. So old habits are hard to break. But what's happening is these new businesses. I mean, if you consider what Apple and Google and Facebook and have done, they've had this growth of value that has been unprecedented in history, and it's, Michael, just what you described. It's around delivering mass customization. So that's one area that's created a new customer expectation.
Sure.
So that consumer that's dealing with those firms goes to their local retail bank, and they go to the ATM, and it says English or Spanish.
Right.
They think, this is crazy. I've been banking here for 20 years. You've got so much data on me, and you don't even know what language I speak. And then you go in and talk to the teller, and the teller looks in their systems of record and can say what you have in checking or savings, and then they ask if you want a new credit card.
Right.
So that model is breaking down because this new customer expectation of mass customization. So we think that's one area. The second is in product development cycle. The product development quite often has come from R&D or marketers who are often guessing about things. But when you get this level of empiricism of what customers are actually buying, what they're actually looking for, if you look inside your data, you can get incredible insight into what should be included in the next generation of your product or the next generation of your service.
Absolutely. I think about it, Michael. I mean, my children will probably never walk into a bank. They're not going to write a check. Their phone will be their wallet. You're talking, Apple with iBeacon technology, and NFC
But Vala,
technology.
when you say this, you know what I think? Unprecedented opportunity for thieves to steal everything that you've got.
Well, let's just hope they don't upload pictures on the cloud. No, I'm kidding. But my point is that just think about the buying experience and the fact that, again, some of the traditional things we talked about, how whether it's selling insurance or going to a bank or even going to an ATM machine. I mean, at some point, it's your phone. And how does you talked a little bit about IoT, Internet of Things, and Gartner has projections that it could be as much as 30 billion plus connected devices by 2020. IDC's projection is north of 200 billion.
That's right.
And so vast disagreement bottom line, an order of magnitude more than it is today. And whether it's the Fitbit or the iWatch or the Google Glass, this I think has not only will dramatically impact marketing, but customer service and support, where your field agents, your customers, your partners can connect in real time through video and collaborate through social and what are your thoughts in terms of future of work when it comes to connected devices and, let's say, service and support as an example?
Yeah, and around IoT and some of these different areas, we think it's going to take off in a B2B model in many ways faster than it is in B2C. We hear the jokes about Google Glass that, who wears Google Glass to a party? It's a glass hole. There's all these social connotations in a B2C, but when you look B2B, all of those issues just disappear, and we see massive, just on that alone, enormous potential on field agents who may go out to repair an air conditioner, and they haven't seen this type of air conditioner before or this particular problem, and boom, right there on Google Glass, they can have an expert in the firm guiding them through specifically how to fix it, and so that field agent is getting on-the-job training. They're fixing it right the first time, and so you can see in just a little use case like that, tremendous value in wearables or something like Google Glass in a B2B field service connotation. So, it could have tremendous bottom line impacts, employee retention, so forth and so on. And so you're right. this is moving so fast that people don't know how to predict it. We just know it's going to be really, really big.
I met a professor at Suffolk University recently, and he encouraged the students to text him questions during his lecture to his class, because he felt that some of the students would go to him after class asking questions that should have been asked during the lecture. And it was a Boston University mix of, a diverse group of students. Some of them were uncomfortable asking questions in English or raising their hand. But as soon as he opened up his glass where you could, send your text, order of magnitude more questions, and he was able to shape his conversation to meet the students. So I thought that was a great utility example of using glass to, improve education.
No, absolutely. There's many implications there. We're seeing other use cases in education with universities, and we've all seen this. Some of us lived through this. There's nothing worse than somebody entering the wrong major in college and getting down on themselves or suffering because their parents said, no, you must be an engineer, or you must be pre-med, or whatever it is. And so we're now getting to the case, if Michael and I both get the same assignment for calculus, and we do it on our computers, and the professor the next day will say, Malcolm, you took 2 hours on this, and you got a lot of them wrong. And Michael, it took you 20 minutes, and you nailed all of them. Michael, maybe you should stick in this major, and Malcolm, it's time to go do phys ed.
Absolutely.
So you start to see where that connection with the professor and understanding how somebody learns and where their strengths reside, we think you could really have this revolution in the educational process as well.
K-12 in the U.S., I believe 5 million Chromebooks were sold because this adaptive learning model, because now the professors are assigning the homework in the cloud. And yes, Michael finished it in 10 minutes, and it's the 4th hour, and I'm struggling with a module. You don't need to wait for a test end of the month to know that, I need help. So it is, Chromebooks in K-12 in the U.S., it's really driven by this contextual intelligence in real time that's delivered to the instructors and teachers, which is transforming how we ensure student success using cloud and mobile technology. No question.
Right. Precisely.
So we have a question from Twitter, Malcolm, and Zachary Jeans asks, what are the potential roadblocks in the way of one-to-one mass personalization? HIPAA, new laws, consumer habits. So what are the obstacles, impediments, or issues that are going to slow this transition down?
Yeah, anybody who says, oh, this is all going to grow to the sky, view that with tremendous skepticism. We're collectively feeling our way in a lot of these markets. And I think two things that will slow things down. One is creepiness, and another that's related to it is security. So on the creepy factor, look, let's start with Pandora. That's easy. I give them my musical information and tastes, and what I get back is just lots of very personalized and very pleasurable listening. And if somebody finds out I'm a Led Zeppelin fan, well, who cares? So the give in that case isn't that big. I give you my musical taste, and the get is terrific. I get all this, hours of listening pleasure. But what if you get to something where the give gets bigger? The give is my personal financial information, my personal health information, information about family members and things. Suddenly you start to cross lines where the get has to be considered. So that's where we're seeing it. Started in places like movies and books and the rest, where people don't see a lot of downside with the give. But when you start to see, so for example, earlier when I talked about telematics with car insurance, some people are going to say, hey, that's great. If I could save a few $100 a year, I'm more than happy to share that information. Other people find this very Orwellian and dystopian of, I really don't want somebody at a big corporation seeing where my car is and specifically how I'm driving it. I couldn't think of a worse nightmare. So that's not worth a few $100. I'm not going to enter into that relationship. So I think that we're going to have to determine where people are going to be comfortable and where they're not going to be comfortable. And then the second is around security. I mean, look what happened this week with Home Depot. Look what happened this week, obviously, with these celebrity photographs.
Sure.
Michael, we're still looking for yours, but
yeah, exactly. There you
he
go.
He posts them himself.
There you go.
But I think we're going to see more and more of this as we go forward. And you talked about it with the online banking example, but you look in Southern California, we've now reached a societal point where they don't even talk about bank robberies on the evening news, physical bank robberies, because they happen so often. It's not news anymore. It's just part of how society has operated and has reached its threshold with that level of crime. I think when it comes to more and more of our lives going online, there's going to be more and more bad activity online, and I think that is going to slow things down in certain markets as we start to figure out, what is our societal equilibrium? What risks are we willing to incur for the upside that we gain from these products and these services?
Is it ultimately that convenience is winning the battle in terms of discipline and due diligence? I mean, I think of it from a marketing perspective. I can use a multi-tenant cloud SaaS solution and light up a capability without working closely with IT, and perhaps lose sight of the fact there's integration and processes and compliance that's required in order to have a robust solution. Yeah. I think, and this is the shadow IT that we hear about. What are your thoughts about that? And then, as marketeers hire data scientists and technologists, it seems like you have that a need for IT to be more collaborative and flexible, but at the same time make sure it's a secure, compliant, environment.
Yeah, lots and lots of thoughts about that. So, the first, let me get through what I think is sort of nonsensical conversation. One are these projections of every company has to have its chief digital officer. I don't think that's going to come to fruition. I think that the chief digital officer should be the CIO. So it's an evolution of the IT job as opposed to bringing in a CDO. In some industries, in some cases, or with companies that have certain starting points, it may make sense. But as a rule, I don't think that role is going to truly take off as some people are projecting. A second is these projections that marketing is going to control more technology budget than the CIO. I think when the dust settles in 5 years, we'll find that wasn't the case. Now, let me be clear. Will a ton of money be spent on marketing-related activities? No question. But it's, as I was sharing, I am a CMO myself. Cognizant, we're a Fortune 300 company, so I do go. Recently, I went to one of these CMO downs where we all get in a room and share best practices, and this is a big point of the conversation. And just what you're describing, a lot of CMOs are like, I don't want to do that. I don't know how to manage vendors in that way. I don't know how to structure this. I need to work with all the legacy systems. I need to worry about security. I need to worry about standards. I need to worry about program and project management. I'm the branding guy. And so do CMOs and CIOs have to work in partnership in a way they never have before? There's no question about that.
Sure.
But is there going to be true rogue technology, renegade IT, where marketing departments just run off on their own and do things? I think they won't, for those two important reasons. The downside around security is just too profound, and secondly, the skill sets that IT has, and also all this stuff has to get integrated to the legacy environment, that right. You really should leverage the professionalism and the capability that's in the IT department.
What's amazing to me about all of this is we're talking about taking a business and figuring out how can we take best advantage of online capabilities and data. And it's a very simple question, but the implications of that cut across, as we were saying, the business model, the operations, the competencies, the culture. Isn't that extraordinary that simple question has such dramatic impact across every aspect of a company?
Yes. The short answer is yes. The longer answer, the Michael, in some ways, we're fighting human nature. You do it in your own life. When somebody in your family says, "Why do you do that?" and you're like, "Well, it's because I've always done it that way. It's what I like to do." And even though they add new evidence, you still keep doing the same old thing. And this is where we see there's going to be this war between data and hippo management. Many companies are run by hippo management. You know the acronym. It's the highest paid person's opinion. So you ask them, well, why did we do that? Why did we do that deal? Why did we organize this way? And somebody says, well, it was Fred's idea. As opposed to, did we really look at the data and did that lead us to the right answer? And when Netflix launched House of Cards as their first original program, I think it was a great illustration of that. They didn't take the Hollywood approach. The Hollywood approach historically has been the hippo approach. Let's get 5 people in a room and figure out what we're going to broadcast because they're the smartest people in the room. But, what's the old line? Nobody knows anything in Hollywood. And so Netflix took a Northern California approach, which was a techie approach. Let's look at the data. And when they looked at their data, it told them what the viewers of Netflix want is the old BBC program House of Cards. Nobody would have guessed that on their own, but that's what the data said, and they created a contemporary American version of it with Kevin Spacey, and it proved to be very popular.
That's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. When we talk to other CMOs that have been on CXOTalk, like Jonathan Becker, CMO of SAP, he has, I believe it was 18 to 20 data scientists in marketing working with the marketing automation solution, the CRM solution, the social listening tools that SAP uses, the community platform, and all of that unstructured data they're capturing and trying to better understand how to ultimately improve the customer experience. And as we live in this experience economy, maybe driven by mobile, social, analytics, and apps and IoT and others, how important is design in all of this? Designing a user experience or processes and engagement models where you can differentiate yourself against your competitors.
It's incredibly important. So the design has to be, I think, at 2 levels. One is just how somebody interacts with your product. That you can see that with the tools that we use. If you have an Android device or you have an iPhone, the intuitive, clean, beautiful, simple design of that. And then there's also business model design. How do I design a new business process to fit with the digital age? But getting back to the first one, I can share one anecdote with you. It was a client. I can't name who they are, obviously, but it's a big auto manufacturer. If you name the top 10 car companies, you would name this company. And their CIO referred to it as the intervention because the CEO and head of product management, head of marketing, a few others came and said a few years ago, this is nuts, that in this digital world, we're trying to sell these cars that we try to design them to be great cars, but when somebody is in our machine literally hundreds of hours a year, and all we can tell them is how fast they're going and how much fuel they have.
That's true.
Doesn't make any sense.
It's so true.
How do we create this very immersive, personalized experience? The metaphor that was used is as if they're sitting in an iPad. How do we create that type of experience? And the CIO looked, and it was all about design, and this is why he answered this way. He said, I can't do that. We can't do that. We're the supply chain guys. We're the SAP guys. That's not what we do. And the CEO said, wrong answer. And I'm going to give you several months to give me the right answer, and if not, I'm going to figure out who else should do this, because you are the technology team. So this is where consumer-oriented design has to become part of a core competency of the technology team now.
But is this why, when you look at CDO reports that say in 2011 there were 75 CDOs and we'll exit this year with about over 1,000 chief digital officers. Is it because CIOs, like the particular one you mentioned,
yes,
I don't know how to take mobile, social, cloud, analytics, big data, IoT, wearables, and deliver a beautiful customer experience
yes.
or employee experience?
No, that's where I was being tough about CDOs earlier, but what is needed, you've got your thumb exactly on why people are turning to CDOs, is you need to create these you need to design these experiences, number one, and secondly, you need to design the business model to deliver them. And when there's a void, that's when folks turn around and say, well, look, we're behind, nobody in the room is raising their hand, let's go get ourselves a chief digital officer. But this is something that if you go inside some of these firms that we've been talking about on this call, you go inside a Netflix and an Amazon, they can't distinguish between the business and the technology. They really are one and the same.
Right.
And yet, in more traditional industries, more traditional companies, they are still thought of as distinct. And so, any way that you can get those to come together as quickly as possible, that's where I think the role of the CDO is coming forward in some places because of that precise need.
Sure.
It's interesting. We had recently one of our guests that we had on this show was Charles Phillips, who is the CEO of Infor.
Sure.
And they have designed their business and their business model now based around the foundation that
beautiful enterprise software.
Beautiful enterprise software. Mm-hmm. And it's not just a matter of attractive pixels on the screen, but as you said, it goes to the heart of understanding how do our users interact with this software, and how do we create a model in a sense that our users will relate to and find intuitive and therefore useful and valuable.
Exactly. It's as opposed to wasting technology on people, and these notions in a corporate environment, user acceptance training. That's a euphemism for we shall beat you down until you use our stuff. It's just the opposite. Now that this consumer expectation of it must be beautiful, and to your point, Michael, it's not that it just looks beautiful, but it feels like it's catalyzing what I'm trying to do. It feels natural, and even what I think of as natural plus, meaning it's what I wanted to do, and now I can do even more. And so it's not just beautiful in terms of how it looks, but in how it behaves and helps you do your job or whatever you're trying to achieve better, faster, cheaper.
Well, we're just about out of time. This has been an extremely quick 45 minutes.
And we didn't even ask nearly all the questions we wanted to ask.
I know.
Because it was some fascinating answers and it was unbelievable insight. Thank you very much, Malcolm. That was fantastic.
Great. Well, thanks for having me.
And people listening, if you think that all of this is scripted, think again. We send out a list of basically discussion topics to the guest, of which in this conversation we deviated
from like hello.
After hello. Well, we got through hello. That was scripted.
Yeah. That was, yes. The intros are scripted. But yeah, that was a fast 40 minutes. And I'm just you must be having a lot of fun because as you're transforming the business and you're doing it for 85,000 employees, and of course you have to stay at the leading edge because that your customers expect that from you in terms of the services that you provide. So hopefully that's another book and another appearance on our show in the future, because we'd love to keep talking with you.
Yeah, we would love to have you come back.
Great. Well, I'd really enjoy it. So thanks, guys.
All right. Well, thank you. And everybody, we've been talking with Malcolm Frank, who is the Executive Vice President for Strategy and Marketing at Cognizant. Please join us again next week, and I hope everybody has a great week.